There we are. There we
Hey,
are. Simon Evans and Franco Panizo back in the house. No Jose Armando and no Andrea Yanis once again. They are busy with the Honduran national
on
team.
international duty, yeah.
They were called up. Simon and I were not called up. We stayed locally here, domestically. So no national team call-ups for us. But welcome back to Miami Total Football Radio, the show, aka Miami Total Football Radio, the show.
That was a good
We've got.
roll. That was a good roll.
I get kind of stage fright sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't come off that smoothly, or I struggle with
That
them
was
a
that
little
was a
bit.
top class roll.
So far, I haven't done. I haven't made a blooper yet on these live hits. I'm sure it's going to happen eventually. But again, I'm Franco Panizo. That is Simon Evans joining me here. We will talk all things Inter Miami as we have for. I mean, I can't believe summer's over now, right? Summer's over. It feels like just yesterday, Lionel Messi was announcing that he was going to join the team, and now we're Labor Day weekend just passed, and Inter Miami's back in the full swing of the regular season, and looking for a
Playoff
playoff
push.
spot. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about their most recent victory against LAFC. But first, let's start with some pleasantries. Simon, how are you doing today? You're doing better after fighting a bit of a bug there.
Yeah, I am. I am afraid I had the latest variant of COVID. Even my illnesses are retro. But yeah, I'm fine now. It was 2 rough days, but thank you very much. Yeah, I know much better now.
I'm glad to hear you're doing better. We wish you speedy recovery last week. I didn't know you had it until over the weekend when a source told me that's what you had. But
So,
I figured you were under the weather a good bit, so I didn't want to bug you too much or pester you with, oh, what do you have? I just let you be, and then when you're ready, then I'll pepper you with the questions. But Simon's back in good health.
appreciate it.
I guess we just jump right into it, right? Inter
Yeah,
Miami
why not?
took on LAFC at what was Bank of California Stadium. Now it's BMO Stadium in Los Angeles, and another road game. This one was a star-studded affair. There were a lot of celebrities in the house, a lot in attendance there at LAFC Stadium, and they witnessed the latest episode of Lionel Messi and Co. the show because Inter Miami came out on top of this one 3-1. They didn't start the game in the best manner, but they weathered that storm. And then they played much better for much of the rest of the match, getting 3 more points in their push to the playoffs. We'll talk about that later, Simon, because I've got an exercise for you. Primo Steve Brenner did it last week. Now it's your turn. But we'll get to that later on. Simon, what do you think? Just overall thoughts on the victory? I mean, if you want to talk about the crowd and Selena Gomez's reactions,
absolutely.
you're more than welcome to. I mean, Selena Gomez used to be my celebrity crush. She's not
Really?
anymore. I'm sorry to share that with you, Selena. You're no longer my celebrity crush.
Oh, she
But
must be distraught.
but yeah, what did you just think about the overall game and just the overall spectacle of it all?
Yeah, the spectacle of it all. I mean, LAFC wins the celebrity wars, right? I mean, Miami's done pretty well with, Kardashian and LeBron and so on, but predictably LAFC, comes out and trumps that massively with all those celebs there. But I have to say as well, I'm not sure how great a look it is for LAFC that like all those celebs trying to join in the chants and trying to they looked like they were like trying really hard to be into the game. I'm not talking about the Selena Gomez viral face that went around, but just generally, there's some clips where they took the guys down by the edge of the field, and I don't know. I mean, yeah, you win that LAFC, but you know what? I thought that was the best performance of the Messi era. Not a complete performance because we'll talk about the defending and the amount of chances they gave up, especially in the first 20 minutes, half an hour. I'm sure we'll get into that. But I like the way they were set up. I was a little bit concerned after the Nashville game that Tata's tactics were a little bit too static and playing the same way against everybody, even when they set up to frustrate you effectively like Nashville did. But he went there with an away formation, like a road trip formation, not playing. And Taylor Twellman was like, shocked that there was no Campana and no Martinez, and saw this as like some, negative move. They've got no focal point to the attack. It actually worked really well because I thought, Facundo Farias is perfect for that breakaway style of play. And Messi was forced to play a more central position. And it actually forced Messi to work harder. It really did. I think, the Messi that walks around on the right flank and floats into the game when he wants wasn't there. There was the Messi who was in the middle of the game and was forced to be involved a lot more. But some outstanding individual displays. I'm sure we'll get into those as well. For me, I thought Diego.
You like Diego Gomez, right? You like Diego Gomez a lot.
Diego Gomez, I thought, had his best game in a pink shirt. Not just offensively with some of the assists and the crucial passes to Messi, but also won a lot of challenges. I mean, the big chance Facundo Farias had to make it 3, where he poked it just wide. That was after a turnover won by Diego Gomez. I thought he had a great game. But yeah, overall, I think it was a really mature performance away from home. You don't need to dominate possession every time you play, especially when you're playing the champions away from home. Go and play, set up for the counter-attack and be effective, and that's what they did.
Now, you touched on assists. He didn't get an assist in this one, I don't think, unless they gave him a secondary assist, which we don't count here on Miami Total Football. We don't count secondary assists.
No, all right, too.
But he should have had an assist. He should have had an assist to Lionel Messi in that first half. He plays a heck of a ball, a diagonal pass on the ground, and Messi, for his most clear-cut opportunity of the game, and John McCarthy, the former Inter Miami goalkeeper, he makes a very good save. That's what led to the Selena Gomez reaction that, like you said, went viral. Let's get the listeners and viewers a little bit integrated into this week's show. Tank721 says Simon the Wise is back, and he's got a little owl there for you, Simon. Steve Munoz, Steve Munoz, the celebs were the only group that didn't complain about the record-breaking ticket prices.
I'll tell you what,
paid for tickets. I wonder if they just get invited or they actually have to pay for tickets.
I think they have to pay for them boxes. I think the place where Leonardo DiCaprio was eating his
ice cream.
Yeah, I think that was like, is that the right word? Paletta? I got that right? Yeah.
I think it was an ice cream, right? I don't know. Was it a popsicle? I guess.
Yeah, I think it was like one of those ice cream popsicle things that you find. Yeah. But anyway, I think they have to pay for those boxes. Yeah. But it was funny. I was listening to.
I wouldn't put it past MLS to have invited all these people and been like, "Yo, this is a free box for you."
I was listening to another podcast that we won't mention that's produced by a local newspaper, and the LA correspondent who was on as a guest was assuring everybody that the only celebs that would be there, because tickets were so hard to get, the only celebs would be there would be those who were there all the time, who were like supporters like Will Farrell and Owen Wilson. And then I'm watching it and I'm like, don't think Prince Harry was there for the Columbus Crew game, It's but yeah, I think they do have to pay a bit. But there was a lot of the pink. Remember we're out in Nashville, we were talking about how many people in pink were there in the stadium, and we kind of disagreed a little bit about the proportion. But there seemed a lot more in LA. But it's that kind of town, isn't it? And people give Miami a bad rep for being like a fair weather sports town. Come on, Los Angeles is like much more like that, I think.
Steve Munoz says, did Prince Harry buy his ticket from a scalper?
You know what I loved about the Prince? You know what I loved about the Prince Harry thing is when you look through that list of all the celebs, it says Leonardo DiCaprio, actor. Like we need to know, but it lists them all. LeBron James, NBA player. Selena Gomez, musician, and then it says Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and it had nothing next to the name. What do they do?
It's self-explanatory. It's self-explanatory.
Ex-royals. Yeah.
You know what name I didn't see on there that apparently was at the game? I don't know. I can't confirm if it was at the game or not, but there's a picture of him apparently at the game, and there's the scoreboard's in the back, and it does look like it's BMO Stadium, and it says Inter Miami 3. You don't see LAFC's logo. You don't see the 1, but it does look like it. And it's Dwayne Wade, and he was not on that list unless he was a surprise turnout. Dwayne Wade was in the house, the former Miami Heat.
He was in the away end, though. Surely he was in the away end and had to buy a ticket,
He was with the members of La Familia. No, I mean he was apparently there, but yeah.
Good for him.
A lot of celebrities out there for this one, all trying to catch a glimpse of Lionel Messi. Now, I don't know how much of it is genuine. I don't know how much of it is, MLS calling in some favors to get people to go, but nonetheless, it made for a good show aside from what was happening in the game. You had Tyga,
Doesn't matter really.
the
I mean,
rapper.
even if MLS was encouraging them, they went. So it was
Of
obviously
course.
it was a place to be seen in LA, which is good. I mean, MLS loves that stuff. Of course they do.
It's also different when it's a one-time thing, right? When it's all like, you talked about Inter Miami having celebs, but it's sprinkled in a few here, a few the next game, a few the following game. With LAFC, it's the one time Inter Miami is going to play over there, barring any playoffs or Open Cups or anything like that. It's going to be the only time they'll play there over the next couple of years. Is because
the finals the only way they could meet again, isn't it?
Yes, this year that would be the only
MLS
other,
Cup they would probably, I would think, have home field advantage for that one.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think Inter Miami is going to catch up to the second place team in the Western Conference. But I mean, it was cool. It added a little social aspect to it, and more than just the football, which was different. I like to focus on the football, but obviously it was a talking point.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. But you know what? It does add to the whole feeling that MLS is becoming more big time. It does, and it does have an impact on people. That stuff, those little viral videos. It gets people. My wife is like curious about what's going on with Inter Miami now, and like people like her who aren't really into soccer. They know it's something that like you should know about or be interested in. So I think it doesn't do any harm, does it?
No, it doesn't. Hey, listen, again, it added to the spectacle. Added to the spectacle. Which, if we're focusing on the field, I agree with you that Inter Miami was the better team from the run of play. I don't know if I fully agree with you and Tata Martino's assessment and analysis that this was their best game. Now we can dive into that in a little bit more detail in a few moments here. But they did play pretty well on the whole, on the balance, against a very talented opponent, and it was away from Inter Miami's home. So they get massive props for that. They've gotten 3 points in the bag. They bounced back from the midweek disappointment that was that scoreless draw against Nashville. Now, you touched on the 5-3-2 formation.
Yeah.
And I did, I like the 4-3-3 better. Like, I'm not a big fan of playing with 5 at the back. That's just my personal preference. But I understand that it's a weapon in a lot of coaches' arsenals these days. Tata Martino has used it a good bit in recent matches.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, the first 20 minutes, they were very poor. And largely because Thomas Aviles had a nightmare. Dennis Bouanga had a horrific performance with his finishing, but Thomas Aviles was right behind him in terms of having a bad performance. Because
agreed.
Had Bouanga scored any of those goals, we're talking much more about Aviles and all his shortcomings. And that was the real reason why the team was breaking down defensively. I mean, at least in terms of the defensive third. Because Kamal Miller held his own. Serhii Kristov had a monster game. I think for me, probably the man of the match. I don't think he set a foot wrong, maybe. Even on the play that ends up, in that 3v2, that Bouanga doesn't slip in the pass to Carlos Vela down the right. Like the way Serhii Kristov, if you watch the replay, the way he jostles and jockeys his body and tries to position himself as he's retreating, didn't give Bouanga a clear option to go forward, but also made him hesitate a little bit. So I think Serhii Kristov had an incredible game.
Yeah, that's really good point. Yeah.
But overall, those first 20 minutes, not very good. Drake Callender had to come up with a big save.
Came up with a few big saves on the night, didn't he? He did. But yeah, you're right. That start. I mean, look, I think the reason why he's playing 5 at the back is pretty obvious. He's got 2 fullbacks whose both of their strengths are going forward. Yeah. And they can provide the width for the team. He doesn't need to play with wingers if he's got those 2 guys going down the flank. So it makes a lot of sense. You still want one of them to be able to get back and make up a 4 when you're under pressure or when you don't have the ball. That didn't happen enough early on in the game. But you're right. Aviles had a really poor game. I'll tell you one thing I noticed about Kamal Miller. And you remember when we talked to him after like one of the early training sessions after Messi arrived, and he was talking about how he was being included in the main sort of rondo groups and working on his touch and possession and quick passing and all that kind of stuff. He's really added that to his game. He looks so much more composed, bringing the ball out of defense now. I mean, it's obviously different instructions he's getting from a coach than he was before, but he was very much a central defender who would launch it, no? And now he's looking to bring it, and he didn't look comfortable at first.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that because in Montreal he was known for being someone that could, build out of the back, carry the ball forward. With Inter Miami during the initial weeks that he was here, he was playing under Phil Neville, was a different style. So was there the elements that he has now to make those short passes like he's doing now? I mean, it wasn't as much of a responsibility as it is now. Where Inter Miami looked to keep the ball, they look to play short, they don't look to hoop it up. That's the last.
He's doing it really well. He's doing that.
Oh, he's doing it. Well. He's doing it very well. I mean, he's playing well. I think Christoph is playing well. Tank 721 here says Christoph and Miller have really upped their forms. They're showing why they get called up to their national teams. J-Dog
recalled in the case of Christoph, I think. No, a recent recall.
Yeah.
You know what? He look. He hasn't got pace, and he's going to get exposed sometimes. You don't want to be in a situation where you leave in Christoph one-on-one with somebody, but he reads it really well. You can see the experience in the way he anticipates and reads things very well. He's a smart defender, but we have to say that in that 20 minutes, LAFC could have scored 3 or 4 goals. I mean, you're right. Christoph makes Bouanga hesitate about the pass to Carlos Vela, but it was still an open pass.
Absolutely.
Bouanga should have. I mean,
Vela's anger was justified, man. I would be that mad if you didn't pass. Like, I could be the worst player on the field. He was wide open, man. The high percentage play was passing to the right winger that's by himself.
And it amazes me that a team you look at LAFC, and I think Carlos Vela's best days are behind him. But if you look at that team, I'm really surprised that LAFC, with like big resources and everything they've got going for them, don't have like a goal scorer like a lot of teams in MLS have. You could pick a striker from 6 or 7 other teams in MLS who would have found the target once or twice in those situations Bouanga was in. I mean, he's a winger, Bouanga, as well, and he's not I know he scored a lot of goals.
I think Inter Miami was a bit fortunate. In this one. Because those aren't the only plays. There was another play for Bouanga where he's in on goal and he just clips the ball and it takes a bounce away from the goal and past the post as opposed to towards the goal. Right, the bounce could have gone the other way and it just didn't. There's also the shot he has from the left side of the penalty area if you're looking at it from an LAFC perspective, and Drake Callender makes probably his best save of the night. Maria Benavides says, she asks, why was Taylor on the bench? So let's talk about that, right? Because let's go back to the formation. He goes with the 5-3-2. There's no natural striker for the first time, which I think was a surprise. I don't think many people had Messi starting up top alongside Facundo Farias when both Joseph Martinez and Leonardo Campana were healthy and available.
Right. But it worked.
I liked what I saw from Farias in terms of his ability to stretch LAFC. That gives Inter Miami's attack a different element, right? Because when they have Campana and Joseph, they're both players that need to get on the ball, combine. They don't really have pace to stretch a back line. But with Farias, they did. Whether it was on the ball or off the ball, he was making runs that challenged them in different ways and maybe that they weren't expecting. Now, his goal, the opening goal in the 14th minute, comes from, some great recognition from him to find the space. And Tomas Aviles, who we just criticized a whole bunch, deserves all the props and all the credit for hitting that line splitting pass
100%.
to find Farias. This is one brilliant moment in the game for Aviles. Now Farias hits a sliding effort, a heck of an attempt to get it on frame. I think John McCarthy probably could have done better there. He probably wishes he could have had that one back. Maybe took one step too many to the near post. Because the angle Farias has, you're not scoring from that angle too often, especially on a sliding effort like that. I mean, it was
well. I think
one step over and he makes that save.
But I think the sliding aspect of it, I think he was slightly underplayed on the broadcast. I thought that was an absolutely brilliant finish because No one expected it. And McCarthy didn't expect it, and that's why he was caught out a little bit. You're right, he was caught out a little bit. I think he expects, justifiably, there's going to be one touch and then the shot. And in that one touch, he's got time to position himself and get himself set right. And he didn't have that time because Farias took that inspired decision that I'm just going to slide and hit this first time. You very rarely see a player score a goal like that. And it's technically really difficult to put it in the corner of the net while you're sliding and you're hooking the ball like he kind of hooked it in while he was sliding. I thought that was an absolutely brilliant improvised finish. I mean, really, really, really top class.
Well, that gave it a Miami 1-0 lead, and we didn't even go over the whole lineup. So let's do that. I missed that here early on. New days, so my mind's all over the place when it comes to the video. Got a lot of buttons to click, a lot of things to manage over here. So it was the 5-3-2, Drake Callender in goal. The back five, right to left, were DeAndre Yedlin, Thomas Aviles, Sergio Christoph as the sweeper, Kamal Miller, and Jordi Alba. The midfield three, Benjamin Cremaschi, Sergio Busquets, and Diego Gomez. No Dixon Arroyo in the starting lineup in this one. And then up top, Facundo Farias and Lionel Messi. Again, the first 20 minutes weren't great, but they scored the goal. And after that, they kind of settled into the game. They grew in confidence, and LAFC started to lose a bit of their stranglehold in terms of the control of the match. And Inter Miami took the lead into the half. Second half is when Messi delighted, and Messi, did what Messi does. Now, he wasn't Messi the goal scorer in this one. He was Messi the creator, Messi the facilitator, Messi the Los Angeles showstopper, because that first ball to Jordi Alba for the 2-0, I mean, gorgeous ball. Great recognition, of course, from Jordi Alba to see the space and make that diagonal run, but Messi to hit the perfectly weighted pass. I mean, Jordi Alba had a good bit of time in the penalty area to make a decision. Right? You see him even do the little stutters as he's trying to figure out where he's going to try to place it, but he does place it. And listen, also of note there, Sergio Busquets hit the pass to Messi. So yes, in MLS terms, he gets the secondary assist. But we don't count that here on Miami Total Football Radio. But nonetheless, it was the Barcelona trio. They combined and they gave Inter Miami a 2-0 lead. What did you think about that goal?
Yeah, no, it was beautifully worked goal, really composed finish from. I mean, that's not a fullback's finish, is it? That's a guy who's got real supreme confidence that he's going to put that ball away, and made the run. But he had
all the time in the world, though, Simon. He had all the time in the world.
He had all the time in the world, and LAFC's line was all over the place. Hollingshead's playing on there. Not only him, somebody else was who I can't remember, but there was two of them hung back, and so it was way too easy. But really well worked goal, great ball from Busquets into Messi, and then Messi makes it look easy, but it was a fairly straightforward job he had to do. But yeah, no, it was a nice goal.
The interesting thing there, interestingly enough, I just repeated myself, I said interesting twice, is that literally a minute or so before, Inter Miami had an attack down the right where DeAndre Yedlin was, he had a decent look on goal, and he couldn't get his body around the ball, and he shoots it and it hits the side netting. It was a pretty poor
it was bad.
take, given that he was pretty open. But technically, he's not the best, and that's not his forte. And then you see Jordi Alba on the other side, what he can do if you give him the ball in a similar spot, and then he puts it away. So I think the back five, a big part of it was because Inter Miami wanted to solidify things defensively, right? Like, they want to have the ball. They want to keep possession. They didn't go there to park the bus, but they know LAFC is going to have their chances, and they want to do their best to try to negate that.
Which goes back.
Whether you agree with the tactic,
which goes back to the question about why Robert Taylor wasn't starting, which we didn't answer. But I think you just kind of answered it, though. I think the idea, if you're playing two fullbacks as your wide players, and they're going to provide the width going forward, you don't really have room then for somebody to play in the position that Robert Taylor has been playing as the third striker, winger.
But he could have gone 4-3-3, right? He could have stayed with the same tried and tested 4-3-3. He
could have done. He could have done, but if he's gone five at the back,
because he wants to short things
up. It's hard to squeeze him, and then if you put him in the midfield, he obviously wanted that extra protection that you get by having midfielders who can defend more than maybe Robert Taylor would do as a more advanced creative midfielder. So I can see the logic behind it. Much as I really like Robert Taylor and enjoy watching him play, I could see why he was sacrificed, let's say, in that game.
I think Robert Taylor was a bit unlucky to be sacrificed. Like, I get, listen, they had their game plan, what they thought was best for the game. But he goes from playing right, wing back, and he had been moved there for a game or two, a cameo or two. And then against Nashville LC, he's put back at wing. So he's playing two completely different positions. And he doesn't have a great game against Nashville. Possibly in part because he was just playing right wing back in the matches leading up to that. And then he gets dropped in this one, which, look, Tata's got to do what Tata's got to do in terms of what he thinks is the best game plan. And look, after the first 20 minutes, like we've said multiple times, they competed and they did a good job of negating LAFC after those first 20 minutes. Now, going to the third goal. Slate on in the dying minutes. Inter Miami hits on the break. It's Messi and Campana with a whole lot of space in front of them. Messi does his magic on the ball, draws all the attention, and then feeds Campana down the right for a left-footed finish, curled low into the back post. That made it 3-0 against LAFC, which is impressive, very impressive. At least just from the the scoreline standpoint. You can talk about the run of player, whether you agree with it or not. But in terms of the goal, it was the type of pass that Buanga should have hit Vela with in a very similar spot. Very similar spot in that first half. And Campana made no mistake on his chance. That goal to me said a lot about the team. Like this team, and I know it's cliche and every team says that they're all a family and that they're all super tight knit and they're a band of brothers, et cetera, et cetera. But like you can see how well knit the group is, how happy everyone is that everyone's doing well. And yes, that happens when you're winning, and it happens when everyone's scoring a goal or everyone's contributing on the score sheet. But you can see just how free flowing, with how little pressure this team is playing on. They still have a very tough task in terms of making the playoffs, but with the run of form that they're in, you can just see the joy that a lot of these players are playing with.
Yeah, I'll tell you what came to my mind with that goal as well, which was, first of all, Messi isn't, he breaks away, but he knows he probably doesn't have the pace to just go straight through all the way one-on-one and get one-on-one with the keeper. So he puts the brakes on, holds up, sees Campana there, plays the unselfish ball, does everything right. But then when you do that, when you're like Lionel Messi and you decide to be unselfish and play in a teammate, you've got to finish. You've got to finish in that situation. There'll be no worse feeling for someone like Campana than like Messi could have had a go himself. He could have jinked and made a little space. He's not. He's just played me and I've got to put it away. And it was a really confident finish from Campana, who's enjoyed a good few weeks, hasn't he? He hasn't taken that number 9 spot as his own. He came off the bench, obviously, but he's had a good few weeks. At the start of the Messi experiment, it felt a little bit like maybe Campana's being pushed out of the way here, and he's going to be on his way to make way for Luis Suarez, and he's come into things and he's taking his chances.
It's going to be interesting because now you've got 3 options to play up top. You've got Farias, you've got Campana, you've got Jose Martinez. Now, I don't think Farias is likely to be an every game starter at that.
No, I think that's position, a rare option.
But it is a wrinkle. Now, Inter Miami did give up a goal in this one late on. LAFC scores off of, you would guess it, a set piece. Inter Miami continues to struggle with that facet of play that I have talked about and asked many questions to several head coaches about since 2020, starting with Diego Alonso, continuing on with Phil Neville. And even Tata Martino, if you remember that St. Louis City game before the League's Cup. So they give up a goal. It's late on. You think, Inter Miami still has it in the bag. They give up another great chance that Buanga again somehow smashes it over the crossbar from in close. Like, if he puts that in, they had 2-3 minutes left to try to find an equalizer, and Inter Miami would have really been reeling. But anyway, they see it through to the finish line. 3 points in the bag. Now, let's talk about what was said post-game. Because Tata post-game said it was one of their best performances. Or maybe he said best. Let's listen to it first, and then we can paraphrase, or you can translate, since you are el traductor. Simon el traductor. I don't know if that's going to be your nickname. I don't know
it's
how
not.
to pronounce that, but you,
no,
I mean,
it's
you
not.
are our unofficial translator here. But let's listen to what Tata said after the game about the overall performance.
Hemos tenido muchos partidos complejos, pero sí, estimo que por la categoría del rival el partido de esta noche ha sido el más complejo y en el que mejor hemos competido a lo largo de 90 minutos. Otros partidos hemos tomado pausas, en algún momento fuimos superados. En el partido de hoy creo que competimos bien y lo valorizo mucho más repito, porque en Los Ángeles me parece un equipo muy, muy bueno.
Okay. So Simon, he said it was, a very complicated game, but that he thought it was their most complete performance as a team. I understand what he's trying to say. You agree with that?
Well, and if I understood correctly as well, he was saying you've got to put it in the context that this was a top-class opponent they were playing, the champions. So.
Right. Well, so I think that's where you can give him the benefit of the doubt, because in terms of a complete performance, I mean, they've beaten other teams 4-0. They went on the road in Philadelphia and pummeled Philadelphia. I mean, but I get the point. I think from a coaching standpoint, he's talking from his seat, is that they were competitive after the first 20 minutes away from home against one of the. I mean, Philadelphia's one of the top teams too, so see, it's kind of tricky.
Well, Philadelphia made a total mess of that game, didn't they? Like they totally got it wrong. Whereas LAFC didn't. They created chances. They showed the potential they had to give a spanking to Inter Miami. It could easily have gone that way in that first 20 minutes. You put two of those chances in, and suddenly Miami are 2 goals down and starting to open up. He probably abandons 5 at the back at halftime. If they're 2-0 down, it's a totally different game. So, I think I can see what he's saying, that you've gone on the road to LAFC, the champions. Many people will argue the best team in MLS. You've got a bigger game atmosphere, a lot of hype around it. You cope with that. You get off to a bad start, and then you go and win 3-1 on the road at LAFC. It is an impressive result. I see what you mean. You can't call it really a complete performance when the first 20 minutes you gave away 4 clear-cut chances, But my overall feeling at the end of the game was, that was a more mature performance, really. I mean, it's one thing destroying teams who get it completely wrong, or winning at home at a canter, or having a crazy game against FC Dallas, with 4-4 and all the rest of it. This was like Barcelona going on the road to, I don't want to say Real Madrid, but going to Atletico Madrid. Going to Atletico Madrid and winning 3-1 after a shaky start to a game. It was a professional job well done.
It was a good overall performance collectively, right? Like LAFC after those first 20 very good minutes, they didn't really have a whole lot. Again, late on in the dying minutes, after they pulled one back, maybe when Inter Miami kind of took their foot off the pedal. Maybe a little bit of a stretch in the second half, but not too much. And I think that's what Tata gives context to his comment.
And also, he doesn't mention certain things, Tata, because he's one of those coaches that likes to keep certain things on the training ground. But so reading between the lines a little bit, I think he would have been particularly pleased by one development that I really noticed in this game, which is players are not looking all the time to make that pass to Messi. As I mentioned a little bit earlier on, I think, Diego Gomez used to be like one of the, in these first few games, was really guilty of this, of like, I've got the ball, I better give it to Busquets or Messi. And they didn't do that in this game. And they were more complete in that sense, as like being a team, using all the different weapons available to them, rather than just everything going through Busquets to try and get to Messi, which was how the team was at the start, wasn't it? And it has evolved a little bit since then, because, you think about who were the most influential players in that game, and you can include 2 or 3 names that aren't Messi and Busquets,
Now, Tata does say in a different clip that I do have here, that when he first got on, the players had just arrived. He's had more time with them now, although not a whole lot of training sessions, but that they are able to prepare for games better now because there's a full complement of players. They can more easily define their roles for them. Still not at an ideal level because they're playing every 3-4 days.
Go on, let's listen. Have you got it set up?
I do have it set up because it's more about Farias and Farias starting up top, but then after that he goes into the overall preparation of a game and being able.
I always
to
like
coach.
listening to Tata's voice. Go on.
Let's listen to it. All right.
Bueno, en realidad Facundo es capaz de complementarse bien tanto con Jose como con Leo Campana. Sucede que para el partido de hoy entendimos que era mejor jugar con Leo, Messi y con Facundo como delanteros para quitarles referencia a los marcadores centrales de Los Ángeles y ver si podíamos hacer superioridad con el retroceso de ellos en la mitad de la cancha. Y creo que en algunos aspectos se fue logrando, pero claro, con la llegada de los futbolistas que hemos tenido hace 60 días atrás, el plantel es mucho más completo, hay muchas más posibilidades de elegir y hay muchas más posibilidades de preparar mejor los partidos.
All right, Simon. I stole your thunder last time. I said I would let you translate, and then I did it.
No, go ahead.
You get the 51-second clip.
No. I struggled a little bit with that one, but I think if I understood the gist of it, he's saying that he has the abilities to really complement well what he has with Campana and Martinez. That it's basically a good option.
So I'll do it here. I'll do it here for you. So he says that they went with Farias as try to, I guess, surprise LAFC a little bit, to take away the reference point of the target striker and maybe throw them off a little bit in that way. And then he then starts talking, he goes really into detail about, the numerical advantages he thought Inter Miami would have when they hit on the counter, given that now they would have a speedier type of striker in there. It gives them another player that can fill in those spaces. He closes out by saying, we've had more time together as a group. Like he mentions the 60 days, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, my short-term memory. And then he goes into, we have more options to choose from now, and we have more ability to prepare differently, which is what they did here, and it worked out. So going back to the overall point of him saying, it was their most complete performance for him, I get what he's saying against the one of the highest level teams in MLS in their home. He was that put up a fight that tested Inter Miami, right? Philadelphia, like you said, didn't really test Inter Miami all that much in that Leagues Cup game. LAFC did. Inter Miami withstood that. They held their own. They had some good goalkeeping, some good defensive interventions, and then they put the game on their terms, and then they never looked back. So I get the point. I can understand the argument. Or the
CONCACAF Champions League runners-up as well. It's they're a team that's done well against good Mexican opposition as well. So,
I still don't know if I would call it their most complete game. But again, I get what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
I get what he's trying to say. All right. Before we wrap up this one, yeah, let's do it. Let's do the exercise now, Simon. Let's do the exercise now. So Steven Primo Brenner and I did it last week. This is the updated playoff standings, right? So Inter Miami stayed in 14th place, but they cut the gap to 8 points between themselves and DC United. They have 4 teams between them and DC United. There are 9 games left in the regular season. I'm going to ask you to whip out your calculator or take out your phone if you need to do it. But Inter Miami has averaged, not Inter Miami, sorry. The 9th place team in the Eastern Conference over the last 3 full seasons has averaged 43 points. 43 points. Inter Miami, once again, I'll show you. Right now, they're on 25. So they need 18 points to get to that average.
From 9 games.
From 9 games. Do they get there? Is it going to be enough? And I'm going to ask, again, the viewers here, does Inter Miami make the playoffs.
And you haven't got a screen of upcoming fixtures, those 9 games to put up, no?
I did not take that. I should have done that. That would have been a good move. Thank you, Simon.
Well, forgive me then for bringing it up on my screen.
Yeah, do it. Go for it. No, go for it.
No,
that's what we're here for.
Because basically, if we're going to talk about it seriously, we need to evaluate game by game. If you look at those standings, though, you have to say that Inter Miami are a better team than everyone in that group outside the playoffs ahead of them. They're better than the Red Bulls, better than New York City this year, for sure. So, on that basis, it's not, we're not talking about fantasy. Right, games coming up. Okay. Miami versus Kansas City. Right, we know this is a game that's complicado, as Tata would say, because over half the team is missing on international duty. But it's still one that they can get something out of, I think. It's going to be tricky without many players, but the good news is Jordi Alba isn't going to go to play for Spain. He's announced his international retirement. So still got Alba and Busquets who are available for that game.
We'll get to the lineup. We have to still talk about Kansas City. I want your overall map. Give me the map.
Is winnable. They can win that game. Then Atlanta on the road is a really, really tough one, especially with the signings they made towards the end of the window. Atlanta is a strong team. It's a game on turf as well. I could see that one being a draw. Yeah.
Okay, so 4 points. We're at 4 points.
Miami, Toronto. If you're not winning that, you can forget about the playoffs. So of course they've got to win that.
7.
Yeah? Orlando away is another tricky road trip. I mean, Orlando just had a great result where they went to Atlanta, right? Last weekend and pulled off a win there. Orlando are in good form. That's a tricky one, but I think you win that one.
10 points.
Miami, Houston, yes. Miami, New York City, those are the 2 games that are absolutely 2 home games back-to-back. Got to win that. I say yes on both those.
So wait, are we at 16 or 19?
I think
we're
that's
at 13. 6. The exercise just got more complicated.
Well, the only game I'm saying so far out of those that they're not winning.
They're not losing a single game, according to you. They're not losing any of these games.
I'm saying that Atlanta is a danger one, but I think they get a point out of that game. Orlando is also a danger one, but I think they win that one.
So it sounds like you think they're going to make the playoffs. Because, I mean, and listen.
Oh, absolutely I do. Yeah,
I saw your tweet. You're like.
I think they're going to win MLS Cup. I don't think they're going to win the playoffs. I think they're going to win the whole thing.
Give us the, paraphrasing your tweet. Because your tweet after the game, I even was like, stop.
Very simple tweet. I said, Miami aren't just going to make the playoffs. They're going to win the whole thing.
They're going to mess around and win the whole thing. So he said you could have just gave us the answer that way. I do appreciate you though trying to go through the math.
No, well, and then you're into Chicago, who are terrible. Miami at home to Cincinnati. Cincinnati by that stage, they're fighting for are they going to be? They might already have got the top seed by that stage, Cincinnati. But that's a tough one. Charlotte they should beat home and away. Cincinnati is another danger one, but I see those are the 3 danger ones. It's entirely doable for the Miami, for that team. It's entirely doable. I would be surprised if they don't make it now.
So if they win 6 of 9, which I think you definitely gave them 6 of 9 and probably a little bit more with the draws, then they would make it based off of that.
Absolutely, and they might even get in the automatic spots.
That's how great they have to be the rest of the way. And they have been great. They haven't lost in 11 matches since Messi's arrived. But that's how great they have to continue to be through grueling last 2 months of the regular season, which have a lot of games. Don't forget, there's also a U.S. Open Cup game, which I think you might have taken into consideration there in your math because you talked about Houston. So now that I think that might have been 3 points.
Hold on. Yeah.
But either way, you think they're going to make it. That doesn't change. That doesn't change anything. Lou Lopez here in the comment section says, I think Miami will be close, but won't make the playoffs. By a point or 4, it'll be, he corrects himself later, says by a point or 3. Steve Munoz says Miami has 2 or 3 games in hand. Ed Bartra. So you're saying there's a chance. Carl,
exactly.
one of our regular listeners and most avid commenters, says yes and 8th place. And
By the way, if my predictions are right, they probably don't go into the wild card. They probably go straight into the first round.
Tank721 says, let's freaking go. I'm being politically correct here. Let's freaking go. Simon Damas, hashtag El Mago. Maybe.
There's your nickname. There's your nickname.
El Brujo, bro. El Brujo. R says Messi is crack. Listen, I think they're going to win a good portion of those games.
Oh, come on.
The majority of those games.
Okay.
But I just don't think they're going to make the playoffs, man. I just don't. I think it's a task just a little bit too tall for them. Because, again, Messi's not going to play in a lot of these games. Or not a lot of these games. At least 2 to 3. He won't be around for it. So you've got to find ways to have solutions to win the matches without him.
But they have those solutions, though.
Then you're going to have quick turnarounds again. And you're going to have teams that are going to take a page from Nashville SC and try to park the bus. That doesn't mean that they'll do it effectively, but I think they just have to be so good for such a long stretch that I just think they're going to fall a little short. And listen, it's foolish. It's risky to bet against Messi. I said that last week when Primo and I did this exercise.
What did he say? Does he think they'll make it?
He said no. Surprisingly, because Primo's usually very, very positive and very optimistic. But he said no. I'm still going to say no. I think they just fall just short. And listen, if they fall just short and they win Leagues Cup and the Open Cup, I mean, it was an overall positive season. Overall, based on where they were, 2 months ago.
Amazing season.
So I just don't think so. I don't think they get there, man.
You know what? I think people, you can look at those. I think what's in the back of your mind is those games Messi is going to win. You're still going to be playing with, a lineup where you got Busquets and Alba, and then up front you might have, you probably not have Martinez because he's away with Venezuela on those dates as well. But you've got, you could play a front three of Facundo Farias and Leonardo Campana and another attacking player, probably not Robert Taylor, who'll be away with Finland on those international games, won't he? But you still got plenty of options there,
So
it's still not going back to it's not going back to what it was before Messi arrived. It's still an improved team.
If they make the playoffs, you and I stay busier longer during the year. So that's not a bad thing. I just think it's going to be a tough task. I just think at some point they're going to hit a wall, whether it's tactically or, luck could play a factor in a game. They have to be so good the rest of the way. So good. And they have been very good to this point. But they've had Messi for almost all of that. So I think it's going to be a tough task. I think it's going to. It starts with this weekend. If they need 18 points, they've got to win 6 of 9, Simon. They got to win 6 of 9.
That's not impossible. 2/3 of the games.
It's not impossible. But that's going off the average, right? Like, because they're 8 points. Let's do the math a little more simply. They need 8 points. What is that out of 9 games? What do you need to get 8 points? 2 wins and a draw. Now you still that's just making up the ground that stands as of today. You can't expect all the teams ahead of them to just be dropping points like crazy as Inter Miami picks up all the points. I mean, that'd be a very extreme scenario, which maybe with Messi in this Inter Miami group, maybe it could happen. But I just think it's going to be very tough. It's not just about picking up 8 points and making up that difference with 2 or 3 games in hand. It's about making up those 8 points, hoping other teams fall, and then maintaining that level the rest of the way to make sure that you don't end up falling back underneath the playoff line. Even Tata Martino, who I'm going to say this, man, I really like Tata Martino in terms of his public demeanor. Like the way he talked, it's probably because he's such an experienced head coach and he's won at high levels. Like he doesn't really feel the need to have to prove himself, where I think Phil Neville did. And Phil Neville in that way would come off a different type of way. Like Tata Martino, we're going to play it right here.
He's a father figure, isn't he? He's a father figure.
He's like a grandpa. Like he's a grandpa out there. And when he's asked about the playoff outlook, instead of like being like, rah, like, no, we're going to do it. Yes, of course. Have you not seen how we've played? He's kind of like, it's still a tough task. We're going to keep trying as much as we possibly can until the numbers say otherwise. But he keeps a very realistic approach to it. very realistic approach. Let's listen to Tata Martino on his updated outlook on a playoff push.
Finales a este equipo, incluyendo un partido frente a Kansas City, me parece,
Sí.
sin Messi. ¿Le va a alcanzar para los playoffs?
Bueno, como dije también en estos días, aquello que dependía de nosotros, que comenzó como la League Cup o como la semifinal de la Copa, lo hemos asumido y hemos competido bien, y en el caso de la League Cup la hemos ganado. Esto tiene 20 fechas alrededor anteriores a que se arme todo este equipo en Inter de Miami, y evidentemente trataremos de luchar hasta donde los números lo puedan decir.
He doesn't make any grand promises. He's not like boisterous and being like, oh, absolutely.
No, he's not a rah-rah coach at all, though, is he?
He's just like, listen, it's a tough challenge. We're gonna continue to try. We'll see what happens. By the way, something I think about, I don't know if this has always been a Tata Martino thing. I covered him up close on occasion when he was on Atlanta United, but not overly. I just want to play that clip one more time just so you can see his initial reaction. Like like maybe it's always been a thing of his, maybe not. Maybe it's just a point in his life where he's older and he just can't hide how he feels as well. But when and that's why I included the question. And then when the reporter asks him, like, oh, do you think it's going to be enough for you to make the playoffs? His facial expression is like, well, what do you think I'm going to say? No, like that's how I interpret his body language there. Let's play it one more time. It's just the beginning part.
Finales a este equipo, incluyendo un partido frente a Kansas City, me parece,
Sí.
sin Messi. ¿Le va a alcanzar para los playoffs?
Bueno, como dije.
Like, really? What else am I going to say? No? Like, so it's like obviously, it just feels like to me like he was like, well, what else can I say here? But
he's been around the block as Tata. He's been around the block. He knows.
I like the persona that he shows. I like, take the stuff off the field. Of course, on the field, they've done very well under him. But I think just how he carries himself and how he deals with the media is great. Now, listen, Phil Neville was a fantastic quote. Phil Neville was a fantastic quote. I want to make that clear. Phil Neville was a fantastic quote. But there were times where Phil Neville was, trying to sell the idea that the team was better than it was. Like, as opposed to where Tata's kind of just like, well, we'll see what happens. And, there it is. He lets the results do the talking for him.
The thing I like as a journalist is, like, if you ask a question that is maybe a little bit more tactical or, football content rather than kind of, are the team confident kind of questions. Yeah. He actually tries to answer it to you. He's not going to tell you everything because, they don't do that, most coaches. But he listens to your question, he respects your question, and he tries to answer it in a way that he thinks will make sense for the general public. And that's a smart way of doing it, and I respect him for that, because you get quite a lot of coaches who, not naming names, but there's a few in MLS as well who you can tell when you're asking them a question that they just presume you don't know what you're talking about as well, And he's not like that. I like that. And he's done way more than most of the coaches in MLS as well.
Absolutely. So let's start to wrap things up, Simon, by transitioning from the talk of the playoff to the first game in this continued mission for the playoffs, for the postseason. And that is on Saturday night, Inter Miami returns home to DraftKings Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, for a match against Sporting Kansas City. I believe this is the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that the two teams will have ever played each other. So the first ever match between the La Rosa Negra and the boys in baby blue. So it'll look probably, unless they switch up the jerseys, it'll look like a gender reveal party out there. But all right, what does Inter Miami have to do in this one to come out with a win, not a result, a win, because they're at home and they need the points more so than Sporting Kansas City does, at least take Inter Miami's scenario into it. They'll be missing 9 players, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is absurd. It is absolutely absurd. I say this every year. MLS is the only league in the world, basically, that plays through the international break. To have a team that's pushing for the playoffs missed 9 players through no fault of their own, not suspensions, not injuries or anything, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Well, let's go through the 9 players that'll be absent. Well, it might be 8. They reported on the broadcast, the English broadcast, that Drake Callender is supposedly going to stick around for this game against Kansas City before he joins up with the U.S. men's national team, which at that point, I guess you're just trying to integrate him because he's going to have, 3 days with that group before returning back to South Florida. But anyway, Drake Callender was called up, but he may stay behind. It's not confirmed yet. We'll find out on Wednesday during availability with the team. You've got Serhii Christov's been called up. He's the only one of that regular backline that's been called up, which is a plus for Inter Miami, a big plus, because the other Kamal Miller, Canada's not playing this international window. DeAndre Yedlin was left off the U.S. men's national team roster. Jordi Alba, like you said, has retired from the Spain national team, the Spanish national team, and you've got Tomas Aviles as an option there. So, much of that back 4, that back 5 will still be around. You've got Busquets in the midfield, you've got Dixon Arroyo, and then you've got to decide because Benjamin Cremaschi is not around, right? So I just went all over the place. I gave you the players that
No.
We got to go back to the players that aren't going to be there. Christoph Cremaschi, who's with the U.S. You've got Messi, who's with Argentina. You've got José Martinez, who's with Venezuela. You've got why am I blanking? I just went through all of
Robert
this.
Taylor with Finland.
Robert Taylor with Finland. You've got I'm blanking. I know Edson Asconas with the Dominican Republic. You've got Diego Gomez, who's going with Paraguay.
Yeah.
7. I'm blanking on the other 2. Well, Drake Callender would count as 1, so that would make it 8. Who's the last one? Who are we missing? Who's also not going to be there? Campana's in. I posted this literally on Miami Total Football's Instagram page over the last few days. I posted every single player except maybe minus Asconas.
Yeah, there's an article on the front of the official website which pretends to tell you
David Ruiz. David Ruiz. Oh no, Andrea.
How could you forget? You're going to get so much stick after that.
Oh no, Andrea and Jose.
Andrea is going to eat you for breakfast after that.
They're going to roast me after that one. David Ruiz is with Honduras. So all right, so let's start. Let's study. Yeah, it's going to be really funny. In terms of our WhatsApp group, I can already feel it. Simon, let's start with the starting line. Let's start there. Then we'll get into what they have to do well. Who starts in this one? And what formation? Let's go with that first. Formation 4-3-3 or 5-3-2?
You're at home. You can play 4 at the back, and you've lost the central defender in Christoph. So I think he goes with a flat back 4, and Aviles and Kamal Miller play at the central defense.
Okay, so Aviles and Miller. Okay. I agree. If Drake Callender is staying, it's going to be him in goal. I think Aviles and Miller, and then your fullback will be DeAndre Yedlin on the right, Jordi Alba on the left. I think we agree on that back 5.
Yeah.
All right. The midfield 3 is where things will start to get a little more interesting. You've got 3 options there. 3 positions there. Busquets will take 1. Arroyo, you imagine, takes another. Who fills that 3rd spot?
The Cremaschi, David Ruiz position that's not there. The Robert Taylor's not there. Ooh, it's a tricky one.
Victor Ulloa is really the only option.
He is, isn't he? Yeah, he is. He is. I was just going to say that. So he plays.
I think he plays.
Time to step up, Victor.
I think it's going to be Victor Ulloa. Now, then you've got 2 up top. Who are they?
Well, that's 4-3 we've gone. So we've got.
Oh, sorry. Yes, 4-3-3. Sorry. Mine's all over the place. See?
So you've
Campana
got
up top.
Campana up top, Farias to his right, and then who plays
Robbie
that
Robinson. Robbie Robinson.
Possibly Robbie Robinson. Yeah, who else? Is there anybody else who could come into contention there? Probably not, no?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty much close to, because you've got injuries to players that are on the first team as well, right? Franco Negri's not available, Corentin John's not available, Ian Frey's not available, so not much more.
How far away are you hearing on Gregore? How far away?
Oh, I asked Tata last week, and we played the clip while you were out. He apparently looks to have suffered a setback because they had to remove a screw from the foot, and that's actually a good. This tank here is a good. This is a good option here. Now I got away from what I was just about to say. Stefanelli. Stefanelli's one player that has not played yet, or he hasn't played much. I don't think he's played at all, actually. If he has, it's been very little under Tata Martino, which I've been surprised by. I thought he would have more of a role with Messi here and with Tata being the head coach. But he hasn't seen a whole lot of time, if any, since I know he was injured at one point, but he's been back and healthy, and he still has yet to really see the field. So maybe it is Stefanelli. Maybe Stefanelli will go, will start over Robbie Robinson.
But actually, that team, when you put it out like that, even with all those players missing, it's not a bad lineup for an MLS game, is it? It's not a bad lineup there.
But you don't have a difference maker, a guy that's going to win you the game on his own, which in MLS you sometimes need. And I think that's where they'll be lacking on Saturday. They've got Busquets is great, Alba can be great, but there's no like guy that's going to win you the game if the game's on the line. Listen, I think, and this is the viewers and listeners are chiming in. Ed Bartra says Noah Allen. If Noah Allen starts, it's because they're playing a back five, and he plays as
he could come in on the left. He could come in on the left side of the central defense and allow then Alba to go forward, and you don't have to worry about that left-sided attacker position as much. So yes, that's a good shout. Yeah.
If it is a 5-3-2, Simon, if it is a 5-3-2, who does not start? Right, we just gave the starting lineup in a 4-3-3. A little haphazardly, but we're working on it, guys.
Well, if he goes 5, then the Robbie Robinson, Stefanelli position doesn't exist, and you play with Facundo Farias and Leonardo Campana as a front two. And
maybe that is what we see. Maybe, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how Tata Martino approaches the game. Now,
there are a few options there, so it's not that. I mean, when people hear, "Oh, Miami have got 9 internationals out," you just think this is going to be like a B team playing. It's not. It's not quite like that, is it?
Kind of.
Well, you're still playing with like 2 Barcelona legends in your team. Ecuador international striker who hasn't been called up this time, but is an Ecuador international striker. Facundo Farias, who's like just scored a wonder goal against LAFC and ran them ragged.
Goal. Settle down, Simon. Wonder goal. It was a good finish. I don't know about wonder goal.
And ran them ragged for parts of the game.
He did do that, and I think
he made that was his coming out party, really, wasn't it? That game. So I think
he does start. I think he starts for sure. It's just a matter of how the pieces around are pieced together. Against Kansas City at home. I mean, listen, I'm going to ask this question. I mean, I try not to say what I'm going to ask the coach, especially when we're doing something live or something like this. Then if somebody from the team's watching, they can prepare him. But nonetheless, I'm going to ask Tata what he likes out of this 5-3-2 formation. Like what he sees in it that he likes that the 4-3-3 doesn't give him. I'm curious to hear his answer. And maybe if anybody from Inter Miami is watching between now and tomorrow morning, or before we talk to him later this week, then he'll be prepared. But I'm curious to hear what his answer is. I mean, obviously it gives it more defensive solidity and the like, but I'm curious to hear tactically from his, soccer brain, his football brain, what he thinks about it. So, because I can see that 5-3-2. Actually, I think I'm going to bet on the 5-3-2. I think the 5-3-2 is more likely.
No, Allen did well when he came on as well, actually. He did.
He's done okay. He's held up well, by and large, at center back, even though he's not a natural center back. So that's why I think it's possible. Like he's shown more of a propensity for playing Noah Allen at a position at center back than going with like a Ryan Saylor or or the like. So,
that's the think about those games before Messi came. You remember a lot of the kids were playing at the same time, right? With the injuries. And you had games with like Ruiz and Kramaski and what's his name, who's out injured, whose name's just Ian Frey.
Ian Frey, yeah.
You had a lot of the so-called academy players in there and everything. They did get an experience that means that when you bring on Noah Allen with 15, 20 minutes to go against LAFC, you're not bringing on a raw kid. You're bringing on a guy who started MLS games and has experience. So the squad has a bit more depth than people sometimes give it credit for.
LK, who may be Tata Martino in disguise, says the 5 back gives you constant width and allows you to easier without having to overextend. Thank you, Tata. No, thanks, LK, for the comments. It's true.
Yeah,
so,
it gives you width
what Tata
forward.
says. I want to hear what Tata says from his point, what he likes about it. But let's listen to this very quickly. We'll then dive into what we think Inter Miami needs to do and our predictions before we wrap up the show. So let's listen to this from Sergio Busquets on not having Messi and having to deal with all these international absences.
Pues todavía más difícil, ¿no? Perdemos a muchísimos jugadores, jugadores internacionales que se van con su selección, y como tú dices a Leo, ¿no? Que nos marca la diferencia en todos los partidos, en goles, asistencias, pero sobre todo en nuestra manera de jugar y buscarlo. Tendremos que dar un paso más, que crecer, que prepararnos y ojalá podamos seguir en la misma dinámica, aunque está claro que lo tendremos un poquito más difícil.
You know the quote there, the soundbite that stands out the most to me there, it says, tenemos que crecer. We have to grow, right? Busquets saying they have to grow as a team without Messi to find a way to, function and to find a way to get the 3 points. And that's going to be very important on Saturday. Very important. And, who steps up? If someone steps up, then Inter Miami has a chance to get the 3 points. If no one steps up and it's kind of just, then a draw is possible here, and then that obviously
psychological aspect is really important. And I think one way of approaching it is to say, play as though Messi is out there. We've been dominating games, we've been winning games with Messi out there. We're still going to play the same way. We're still going to play the same football. Yes, we don't have that guy there, but let's play. We're Messi's team. Let's play that way. LK's cover is blown.
Sorry, Tata, I didn't mean to put you on blast. Just kidding. So what does Inter Miami have to do? Is it just a matter of players stepping up, or is it a matter of this is what I think. Yes, someone's going to have to step up, someone's going to have to score a goal, but I think it's more about the collective performance. The collective performance, if you can make up for the lack of the star power, then you have a chance to win at home. If you cannot, from the run of play, perform well collectively, and you're hoping for someone to just pull a rabbit out of the hat or to do some magic like Messi might, then I think you're setting yourself up for a poor result. They've got to play well collectively. There has to be a game donde gustan, right? Like from a stylistic point, they play well. That will lead them to 3 points, in my opinion.
Play the same. Play as though he's there.
All right. So to wrap up the show then, Simon. Right? You've given us a good few predictions. This is the last one on this week's show. Prediction for Inter Miami versus Sporting Kansas City. And I want the viewers to chime in as well if they feel able to do so. Prediction for this weekend at home. Does Inter Miami pick up another 3 points without Messi and several starters, or will it be a disappointing draw, or even worse, a frustrating defeat?
Miami will win. I think it will be. I think they'll still score goals. I still think there's goals in that team, and I can see 3-1 or 3-2. I'll say 3-1. I think they win it.
Another 3-1. Okay.
And that will send an incredible message about their playoff chances, because this is the game that a lot of the naysayers thought they will stumble in with those absentees. Even without 9 internationals, they still beat Sporting Kansas City 3-1.
Kyle says 2-0 Miami. LK says 2-0 win. Farias and Alba with the goals. Tank 721 says 2-1 win. No excuses. J-Dog says Miami 2-1. Ed Bartra says Mota should get some minutes if he does not get the start. 2-1 Miami. With Jean Mota, and it's something I have put out there on Twitter in recent days or last week. He started that match against FC Cincinnati, right? The U.S. Open Cup match. He hasn't been seen since. He didn't dress in the following weekend game against the New York Red Bulls. He didn't dress against LAFC. He didn't dress at midweek versus Nashville SC. I don't have it confirmed whether he has suffered an injury or the like, but he has not been with the team in practice. And during one of the most recent games, I think it was the home game against Nashville SC, if I'm not mistaken, when the entire team came out to take a picture with the League's Cup trophy, he wasn't there. Instead, on Instagram, he posts his legs in an Inter Miami blanket watching on a TV from a sofa, which, again, I don't have it confirmed if he's suffered a setback or had an injury or the like. But I mean,
Sounds like it, though, doesn't it? Yeah.
it sounds like it, right? Like just if you deduce it, and your supposition there is that it sounds like he has an injury, which Kata says here. I don't know why they rushed him back. Same with Robinson various times. It's interesting. But all right, Simon. I will say, I mean, they could win. I don't see them losing this game. I don't know if I see them winning this game. 1-1 draw. 1-1 draw. It'll be one of the games that hurts their chances of making it to the playoffs.
Okay.
That's what I think, man. That's what I think.
Fair enough. That's what you think.
If they can get to the playoffs, then that means we stay busier longer. But I gotta call it like I see it. I think a 1-1 draw. I think collectively they'll be okay, but they just won't have enough. But all right, Simon, then that does it for this week's show. Thank you very much for joining me here.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks all the listeners and all the viewers, because this is now a video or visual podcast. So some people tune into it afterwards just visually. Some people tune into it just from an audio standpoint. So I got a yellow card here from Take721. Says yellow card Franco. It's my first yellow card, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Take721.
Actually, for him, you predicted that they wouldn't make the playoffs as well, so that should be 2 yellow cards.
So I should be sent off.
Which is a red. Get off.
So I should be out of here. By the way, funny enough, this wasn't talked about anywhere near enough on the broadcast. There was a handball on Sergio Busquets that they didn't even look at, which I thought was interesting. Like they
right at the end.
It hits him. No, it wasn't at the end. I think it was in the second half. Maybe it was in the first half. I think it was in the first half. And it hits him in the hand, and like LAFC's protesting for a handball, but I mean nothing came out of it. So there it is. I got 2 yellows and a red. Thanks, Tank721.
Exactly, Tank.
All right. So let's leave it there. Thank you guys again for tuning in. So for Simon Evans, I'm Franco Panizo. You have been listening and watching Miami Total Football Radio, the show. We will talk to you guys again next week.
Cheerio.